Thank you so much for your presentation. Yes.
I have a question about the North Carolina signs. How you had a detail of how they are assembled. Before you draw that detail, you take it to a fabrication house, assemble it, and find out exactly how it goes together. Or is this just a rough estimate?
No, it's an estimate. Basically, we build a paper model. Rather, I mean, we wanted to do is to, the whole idea and what you saw with the kit of parts was with very simple fabrication, in this case rolling the material, we were able to get depth. Because if the sign was just flat, it would look like a piece of paper between two columns. The minute we pop it out just a little bit, it creates a dimensional quality. So basically, knowing what we know about how things are made, we put that together, and then we put the drawing together. Then we worked with a fabricator in Louisville that was awarded the prototype, and they put the prototype up, and then we tweaked the prototype afterwards. I don't know if really there was much tweaking. I think they pretty much stuck with what we installed out there.
Well, I think the drawings that we did are pretty close to the actual design. So maybe there's some minor change in dimension, maybe sizes. We had to show all those details to them so they can make the sign the way we wanted to.
The thing that was, there is a level of gratification in these three disciplines that that I wind up talking about we wind up getting involved in. Graphic designers get immediate gratification. They can print something. It can be sent to the laser printer and be done in 5 seconds. Sent to the printer, be done in 3 weeks. North Carolina State University was designed 10 years ago, and it's finally implemented. So there is some level of patience in some things that we do. Generally, our projects are about 2 to 3 years from beginning to end. We do have some that are the most immediate gratification projects are the trade shows. Trade shows can be like Sony was like a bat out of hell. It was 90 days from the concept to the implementation. And it was installed over a 3-day period, taken down over a 3-day period, and stood up for a 3-day period. So it was some projects are quicker than others. In terms of the projects that we do that are, let's say, sign programs, when an architect gets involved in the project, it's probably a 3-year time span. And we have to communicate with the architect for electrical loads, structural loads. So there's a lot of, I know as an industrial designer you're going to have a lot of communication with engineers, etc. But I think this is fairly intensive. Not as intensive maybe as architecture as a responsibility, but there's the reason I showed you that one diagram of the Mayo Clinic with the areas, there's just so much information coming towards us, and it's our responsibility to manage all that information because there's just a lot of things that can fall through the cracks, just like they may in architecture.
So how do you estimate the amount of time that each project is going to involve? And on top of that, my second question is like how many iterations do you go through until a design is like locked with your client?
The first one is how do we estimate a fee? Generally, it's just from experience. Of losing our shirts on previous ones, we wind up getting smart enough to know what we need to charge for it. And then how many iterations we may go through. We generally show three alternates, and most of the time one of those 3 alternates are chosen. There's some times when we have to go back to the drawing board and show an extra one.
Sorry, what are the causes that delays a project?
The causes of delays on the project is one would be an unprepared client that has a short time frame of response but is ill prepared to deliver. Every project that we do, it's not only us that has something to deliver, it's our client. Our client has to deliver criteria, our client has to deliver a story, our client has to approve a design direction. So they're on both sides of the fence. There are responsibilities that each player has, and if we have which we've had a couple occasions where clients just weren't delivering, but they expected us to deliver, that's one of the shortfalls of how things can be delayed. Another way things can be delayed is choosing the wrong contractor, and the contractor has no idea the quality levels that we have, that we're demanding. And that's why it behooves us to shortlist and choose the right kind of people whenever we can. There are times when we're stuck with someone that a general contractor winds up choosing. So that can delay. In case of a trade show or anything that has a fixed date that it must be installed, that's a very that's dangerous, because if you have to be March 15th, you have to be installed at, let's say, at a convention, there's no excuses for it to be not installed. So there's a lot of liability in terms of who you choose to be your partner on that. I think Matt was a...
You guys have pretty deep breadth of work that you displayed up here, and I didn't see any kind of a consistent style from that. And how have you managed to avoid being stuck in a rut, and like so many designers do, and just kind of tweaking the same answer to different questions?
Well, actually, I had that same critique by by a man named Charles Gwathmey. I don't know if you're familiar with Gwathmey Siegel Architects. We worked with them on an IBM project in North Carolina about 10 years ago, and I presented a portfolio 10 years older than this during the presentation. He looked at it and he says, because his work is just, there's a thread, like Richard Meyer has a thread, or even Ralph Johnson has a thread, or Frog Design has a thread. You know, what we wind up doing is we wind up respond. That's the last statement I was saying. We respond to the client's context and what their story is, and if their story is something that's more vibrant than another one, or if their story is more subtle. For example, the difference between Georgia Pacific bright and vivacious attitude compared to the downplayed and institutional attitude that we take with Mayo. Mayo is a certain kind of buttoned-up organization. On the other hand, I think we pushed Georgia Pacific to be why not make 2x4s fun? I mean, if you make 2x4s just like a 2x4, what we did was we turned a 2x4 and made it come to life. So sometimes you can take some liberties with clients, or you want to push clients with every job that you take. But mostly you need to respond to their story. Otherwise you're doing an ill justice to what you've been hired for.
Does that make your job more fun?
Yeah, well, I think it is. Putting a box around or a criteria around what you're doing to respond to, and how you craft what you're doing, that's what makes it fun. I mean, everything has some criteria around it.
Do you also design the visual media that you were talking about?
No, we bring in professionals that wind up doing that.
So how do you relate both the physical and the digital together, like to have one cohesive?
We, in the case of Mayo, there is a graphic design guideline for colors, for logos, for typography. So we respond to that. In most projects, we would pretty much respond to that. If we take a different tact, then we would make sure we get in the same room with these interactive people that, like for example, if we did interactive media at Georgia Pacific with the bright colors that you saw there, we'd probably want to incorporate that in there as opposed to having everything be kind of gray and white. It just wouldn't work. You want to have the same kind of attitude.